Well, good night. Thank you for your interest to be here. I think it's a very important discussion, this issue, because it's not just related about Mexico. I think the movie is a good picture about what is happening, not just in Mexico, in all the world. I mean, wherever is people consuming illegal drugs that come from the Mexican cartels, they are helping to do that mess. And I think here in many other countries that are more modern, that are supposedly exist more power of the state, even the cartels are here. So that is a very good proof that they are able to be whatever they want to. So the picture is a very good. I mean, the movie is a very good picture about what is happening in Mexico. You can see the cartels sometimes dressed like civilians fighting against the bad ones, but since the beginning, the autodefensas were penetrated by the cartels. Mireles, Papa Pitufo, all of them knew that. It wasn't true that the Mireles didn't know what was happening since the beginning. The cartels financed all that movement because the issue was not to save the people of these bad guys. The issue was just change the power. The Templarios cartel was the head in that moment before all this movement, and at the end, the cartel of Jalisco Nueva Generación now is the head in the Michoacán, and the government was d'accord with all that.
Agree with that. Just one question: at what time do you think Dr. Mireles understands that he's being penetrated by the cartel? À quel moment, dans le film, à votre avis, il se rend compte que ça y est, il est infiltré par le cartel? C'est très important. À quel moment du film?
I am an investigative journalist. I don't speculate. I talk about the facts that I know since the beginning, just since the first day.
Depuis le début, il le sait. He knows it from the very beginning.
Since the beginning, he was part of that since the beginning.
Est-ce que cet exemple-là peut être extrapolé aux autres mouvements d'autodéfense? Is that particular example about the autodefenses does that mean that the other autodefense groups are the same, behave the same?
Sorry, I lost you.
Okay, did you get me this time?
Yeah.
Okay, did you at one time? Would you say that this particular example of that group, autodefense group, applies to the rest of the other groups, the autodefenses?
I mean, this is a very good example how the government is able to work with the cartels, how they are just together, how you can't really recognize who is who when you are walking in the streets in Mexico. That is the problem.
Do you recognize who is who? Est-ce que vous reconnaissez qui est qui à la fin?
No, you can't. You can't. When as you're asking me, Dr. Mireles knew, I'm telling you yes, so you didn't recognize it.
No.
No, that's the problem. The people in Mexico are not able to recognize who is who because everything is together. And just at the end of these kind of stories, you can see clearly that, well,
never was really a civilian movement to try to save to the poor people in Michoacán. All the story was about who cartel is the head in Michoacán. It's all that story since the beginning.
Emilio Álvarez, would you agree with what was said? Do you agree with this, or do you have a different approach? Est-ce que vous avez une approche différente? Est-ce que vous êtes d'accord avec ce qui vient d'être dit sur ce mélange?
I think more or less the same, and in the perspective also that this is an absolutely absence of the state, the rule of law, and the coexistence between cartels, state, policemen, even the army. They knew. And this is an example of what is going on in some other places. The 43 disappearance students is almost an extreme, the peak of the iceberg, of a very extreme story in Guerrero, but it's almost the same. The relation between the narcos, the police, mainly the state police, but with connections. And Mexico used to be a country where the drug just crossed. then became a country where the drugs start producing. And then there were a fight for controlling the plazas, the places where the drugs came, where the drugs come out. And that it is impossible without the government's knowledge.
On dit donc que le gouvernement n'est pas présent physiquement et vous avez l'air de dire que le gouvernement sait ce qui se passe. Est-ce que c'est ce qu'il faut comprendre? The government is not there physically, but you are saying that the government understands what's going on. Can you go as far as saying that the government manipulates the whole thing and knows what's going on?
Of course, of course. If you saw, the movie, in every morning was the federal police there. You watch it.
Except at the beginning. Au début, il n'y a personne du gouvernement. At the very beginning. There doesn't seem to be anyone from the government.
No, you saw it. I mean, the federal police is part of the government. So they were present there, and they were agree with that. With that. I mean, they were part of the plan to change the cartel in Michoacán since the beginning. That's why the federal government led to these members of the cartels use weapons and do whatever they do because they were part of the agreement since the beginning. I mean, for the government wasn't a surprise. I mean, the government at the end, I think, put in jail to Mireles just because they get tired of him because Mireles also tried to move away from that and tried to say, oh no, I am surprised what was happening, all these things. But that's why he is in jail. But he should be in jail since the beginning. He and
Est-ce qu'il y
many
aura un
others.
procès? Will there be a trial of Dr. Mireles? Will there be a trial? Est-ce qu'il y aura un procès?
Supposedly will be a trial.
And then what happens at the trial? Does he speak out? Does he give names of the people in the government that sort of manipulated him? Est-ce qu'il est capable, dans un procès, de donner les noms des gens du gouvernement qui l'ont manipulé?
He wasn't manipulated. I mean, he's not a victim. No. He's not a victim. He wasn't manipulated. He was part of this since the beginning. I mean, how can I explain? He wasn't useful anymore for the government. Right. That's why the government put him in jail. Not because he's a victim or he wanted to change things. No, he wasn't anymore useful for the government. But I think that many people in Mexico, I mean, investigative journalists like me, put the names in the moment when everything was happening. I wrote many pieces in the magazine Proceso and put the names of all the people, all the members of the cartels that was behind this. The government know that. Also, other media. I mean.
Et c'est vous qui avez eu les menaces de mort. You are the one who received the death threats.
Well, yes, not because this is a story. It's because
you're involved in so many stories. Vous êtes dans beaucoup d'histoires. Oui.
Yeah, I mean. For me, this kind of movies, and I'm sure you can see it very clear, is shocking for me. Mm-hmm. Because you are talking about my country. That hurts. And see the faces of all of you watching what is happening, it hurts. Of course, that is not the only picture of Mexico. Mexico is much more than this. Mm-hmm. Much more than the corrupted system. Much more than the corrupted government. Much more than that. But as a journalist, my work is discover these kind of stories and reveal it for the people. So for that, me and many other journalists have been threatened in Mexico. As you know, more than 100 journalists have been murdered in Mexico. Most of them were tortured, raped, cut in pieces, and put in bags. Plastic bags.
Ok, on va donner la parole au procureur de Palerme dans
we
un
are going
instant.
to give the floor
Juste
to
une
the
question,
prosecutor of
Emilio
Palermo. I just would like to ask you a last
Que fait
question.
le gouvernement
What does the government
mexicain? Ou
do,
plutôt ce qu'il
the
fait,
Mexican
c'est
government,
rien,
or
peu
does
de
it
choses,
nothing,
beaucoup de choses.
little, or a lot?
What does the Mexican government doing right now? Nothing, just a little, or does he just let the things go?
We can say several at the same time. Mm-hmm. They do nothing, and they are doing, in other way, some things. But what is sure is whatever they are doing is much less than we need. The question in Mexico is about a big human rights crisis, such a big question of impunity, such a big one. And with that, the due process of law can go on, and you have stories like this. And it is very interesting when we started to saw the film, and we saw how they produce drugs. The director didn't show us what he showed in the end, that they shared with the state police. No? So the one who was producing the drug is the police. No?
That's the conclusion of the
Exactly.
movie. In terms of conclusion, what should we retain from this movie? That you don't fight violence with violence? Est-ce que c'est ça la conclusion du film, que de toute façon on ne peut pas lutter contre la violence
It's
par
the
la
conclusion of
violence?
the film. You cannot fight against
Well,
violence with
we can
violence.
spend all the night to try to learn the lessons about the movie. But for me are two very important lessons. One, of course, this is the result of the corruption. And this can happen everywhere where the corruption is. Second, every person that consumes illegal drugs in the world are part of that mess. People should be conscious about that.
Merci. Alors voilà, donc on a, je pense, c'était
So I
nécessaire
think
de
it was
revenir un petit peu
necessary
sur
to
le
come
rapport
back
entre
to
ce
this
film, la réalité,
relation
telle qu'on
between
la
the
connaît
film
ou
and
qu'on
the
ne la connaît
reality.
pas. Je crois qu'on
Maybe
apprend beaucoup de choses
it is
ce
known
soir.
or
Maintenant,
not known.
effectivement, on va aller
Now,
beaucoup plus loin.
we are going
Est-ce
to
qu'on peut
to
se
go
servir d'un
further.
exemple d'un
Can you
autre pays
use
pour
the
effectivement
example of another
essayer de
country
lutter? Il ne s'agit pas d'opposer
in
un
order to
pays à
try
un
to
autre. Il s'agit
fight?
dans ce
We are
débat
not opposing
de
two
savoir ce qu'on
countries
peut retenir
to each other,
comme
each other,
mesures
but
positives, réelles,
what the
efficaces,
positive
effectives,
measures which can
contre
be
ces
taken,
cartels de la
efficient
drogue
measures
qui
which
sont
can be
effectivement
taken
un cancer pour la
against
société. Je rappelle
drug
juste un chiffre qui
cartel,
a été donné
which are like a
tout
cancer for the
récemment. On
society. I
estime,
would like to
une
remind you
estimation,
some
que
figures.
depuis
It's an
2007,
estimation.
on en est
Since
à quelque chose, on est plus
2007
comme
in
100 000
Mexico,
morts.
we
Donc
have
effectivement, c'est pas un
100,000
petit
deaths.
bilan,
It's
c'est pas
not
quelque chose
a small
d'anecdotique.
figure. It's not
Maintenant,
an
je voudrais que le
anecdote.
procureur de
Now,
Palerme
I would
nous
like to
donne un
ask
petit
the
peu justement une idée
prosecutor
de ses
Palermo
travaux. C'est une figure
to tell
historique.
us
Hein, c'est
what
quelqu'un
he's
qui
doing
compte.
in Parliament. He's
Palerme,
an
quelqu'un qui est
historical
protégé, je crois que vous l'avez
person. He's
bien compris, et c'est
protected.
quelqu'un surtout qui est une
And is
figure justement du
somebody
droit, de la
who is
légalité, et qui va nous expliquer
person
maintenant quelles sont les
illustrating
mesures que l'on peut
right
prendre, que
and
lui a prises dans
legality
la
and
lutte
law
justement
and
contre les
lawfulness.
mafias,
I'm sorry,
et qui
lawfulness.
pourrait justement
And
être étendu à ces cartels
maybe
du
he has some
Mexique.
measures which
Monsieur le
could be
procureur,
also
je vous laisse la
taken
parole. Je sais que vous
in
avez
Mexico.
préparé
I give you
une
the floor. I
intervention,
know
donc
you
il
have
va
been
parler en italien,
preparing
et ce sera traduit
a speech,
pour tout le
and
monde, et je crois que vous
you
avez
are
vos
going
tests
to
de
speak
façon
in
que vous pouvez
Italian,
encore
and it's going to be
en avoir.
translated
Monsieur le
for
procureur, et
everybody.
j'en profite pour vous remercier de
And
votre
I take the
présence
opportunity
ici,
to
à
thank
Genève,
you
au
for your
festival. C'est un
presence
honneur
here
pour
in
nous d'avoir un grand
festival
nom
in Geneva.
de l'Italie,
It's an
comme
honor
vous,
for us
et
to
donc
have
je
you
vous
amongst
laisse
us,
volontiers
such
la
a
parole. Et
big
après, je suis sûr qu'il y aura plein de questions.
personality of Italian. I'm sure
Grazie,
there will
io
be lots of
credo che
questions.
questo film
Je pense que ce film
racconti una doppia sconfitta dinanzi alla mafia messicana.
Merci. Je pense que ce film parle en fait d'un double
in fact,
échec
this film
face
shows
à la
us,
mafia mexicaine.
La prima sconfitta è quella dello
failures
Stato
on the part of the
messicano.
mafia.
Le premier échec,
I
c'est
mean,
celui
the
de
first
l'État
failure is that
mexicain.
of the
La seconda
Mexican
sconfitta
state.
è quella dell'ONU.
Le
And
deuxième échec,
The
c'est
second
celui de l'ONU.
failure is that of the
Il Messico
United
non è un
Nations.
piccolo Stato africano,
I mean,
Le Mexique n'est pas un
Mexico
petit
is
État
not
africain.
a small
non è
African
un piccolo
state,
Stato dei Balcani.
and it's not
C'est
a
pas un
small
petit État des Balkans.
Balkan
È
state
la
either.
decima potenza economica del mondo.
And it
Il
is
s'agit de la
actually
dixième
the
puissance
10th
économique
most
mondiale.
important
E
economic
secondo
power
Goldman
of the
Sachs,
world.
nel 2050 sarà la quinta potenza mondiale del mondo.
D'après Goldman
And,
Sachs,
you know,
en
according to
2050,
Goldman Sachs,
le
in
Mexique sera
2050,
la
Mexico
cinquième
will be the
puissance économique mondiale.
fifth
Eppure in
world
questa
economic
grande
power.
economia,
And
tutto il
considering
mondo assiste
economy,
impotente a un genocidio di massa.
Et pourtant, face à
Nevertheless,
ce grand pays, le monde assiste
the world is
impuissant à un
witnessing
génocide de masse.
powerless to mass
136.000
genocide.
persone uccise tra il 2006 e il 2014.
Between
136 000 personnes ont été
136,000 people
assassinées
were assassinated
depuis
between
entre
2006 and
2014.
2014.
102 giornalisti assassinati perché volevano raccontare al mondo la realtà del Messico.
And 102 journalists were
assassinés
murdered
parce qu'ils voulaient
because they wanted to
révéler
reveal
au reste du
to the
monde
rest of the
quelle est la
world
réalité au
what
Mexique.
was
E tanti
happening
di
in
questi omicidi,
Mexico.
di questi crimini sono commessi da esponenti delle forze di polizia dello Stato che sono corrotti.
Et parmi beaucoup de
And
ces délits, de ces
amongst
crimes,
many
eh
of
bien,
these
il y en a un
crimes,
grand nombre qui
there's
sont commis justement par
great number
ceux
that
qui
are
représentent
perpetrated by
l'État, les
those
forces
who
de l'ordre.
Quindi la
represent
prima
the
sconfitta dello
state.
Stato messicano.
Donc le premier échec
So
que je
the
vois,
first,
c'est l'échec de l'État mexicain.
it's
Ma poi c'è
the
una
Mexican
seconda
state that has
sconfitta, quella
failed.
dell'ONU della comunità internazionale.
Mais il y a aussi
But
le second
there's
échec,
also
celui de
the second
l'ONU, de la
failure
communauté
of the United
internationale.
Nations, the international community.
L'esperienza dimostra che le dichiarazioni di intenti, le convenzioni ONU contro le sparizioni di massa, contro la corruzione, sono un soft law incapace di incidere sulla realtà.
L'expérience a
So,
montré que
so
les
experience
déclarations
has shown
d'intention,
that the
les résolutions
declarations of
votées
intent,
contre
resolutions that have been
les,
voted
crimes
against
de masse
mass
ne sont
crimes
que de la soft
are
law,
just
lettre
soft
morte,
law
impuissante
and totally
devant le
powerless
crime organisé.
in the face
Sono
of
un cane che
organized
abbaia ma non
crime.
può mordere.
C'est comme un chien
It's
qui
a bit
aboie mais
like
qui ne
a
peut pas
dog
mordre.
that barks
È
but
una pistola
cannot
caricata a
bite.
salve.
C'est un pistolet
And it's
chargé à blanc.
a gun
E
that
quanto al ruolo della
is
magistratura
actually
italiana,
loaded
della
with blanks.
magistratura americana,
Quant au rôle de la
Now
magistrature
let's talk about
mexicaine,
the role of
no,
the Mexican,
italiana,
the
americana.
Italian,
et
Americana.
as
à
regards
celui de la magistrature
the
américaine,
nonostante
American
tutti gli sforzi,
judiciary,
malgré tous les
Despite,
détours,
all the detours.
ogni anno riusciamo a sequestrare soltanto il 10% di tutta la droga commercializzata.
parmi
So
tous nos efforts, chaque
despite
année,
all our
on
efforts,
réussit à
every
séquestrer
year
que
we're
10%
able to
de
put our hands
toute la
on
drogue
10%
qui est
of the
Il
drugs that's
90%
produced.
è fuori controllo e alimenta una delle più importanti economie del pianeta.
90% escapes all control and feeds one of
Il
the
business della droga è il
greatest
secondo
economy
business
of the
più
world,
redditizio
and
al mondo dopo quello del petrolio e prima di quello del traffico delle armi.
Le trafic de la drogue est
drug
le
trafficking
deuxième
is the
business
second
le plus
most
rentable
lucrative
au monde,
business in the world, after that
après
of
le pétrole et
oil and
avant le
before
contrebande des armes.
Gli studiosi hanno calcolato
weapons,
che
sales
se
of
il
weapons.
narcotraffico sparisse, l'economia americana si contrarrebbe del 20%.
Les chercheurs ont
So
calculé que
researchers
si
have
le
calculated that
narcotrafic
if
disparaissait, l'économie
narco-trafficking
américaine
disappeared,
se
the
contracterait de
U.S.
20%.
Economy
20
would
milioni di
actually
americani fanno uso di droga.
lose
20
20%.
millions d'Américains
20 million
consomment
Americans
de la drogue.
consume
Nel
drugs.
1997
In
il capo
1997,
del cartello di
the head
Janus
of the
si
Janus
offrì di
cartel
risanare il debito pubblico messicano in cambio della sua impunità.
En 1997,
again
le
in
chef
1997,
du
the head
cartel
of the
Juarez
Juarez
a offert
cartel has
de payer la
offered
dette
to
publique
pay
mexicaine
the
en
Mexican public
échange
debt
de son
in
impunité.
exchange
Questa è la
of
dimensione
impunity.
economica.
This just gives you an
Pour
idea of the
illustrer
economic
la
dimension
puissance
and
économique.
the economic
Questo
power.
significa che le
This
organizzazioni
also
criminali
means
che
that
gestiscono
the
questo business
criminal
sono
organization
potenze economiche mondiali,
are,
forze del mercato.
Ce
represent
qui signifie que ces
a
organisations
huge
qui contrôlent
economic
le
power.
trafic de
Those
la
organizations
drogue
that
sont des,
have control over the drug trafficking
puissances
activities
de marché
represent
qui
a
font l'économie.
market power, and they
Tutto questo non ha
contribute to the
conseguenze
world
solo sul
economy.
piano criminale,
And
ma
this
soprattutto sul piano
has, of course,
macroeconomico e
this has an
macropolitico.
influence on criminal
Tout ça n'a pas seulement
activities,
des conséquences en termes de
and
crimes,
more than that,
qui soient
it
crimes
has
organisés, mais
consequences
surtout en termes
more than that on
macro-politiques et
the
macroéconomiques.
macro politics and
Veniamo da
macro
un mondo in cui la politica
economy.
governava l'economia.
Nous venons d'un monde
Again, we
où
are living in a
la
world
politique
where politics
gouvernait, régissait l'économie.
used to
E siamo
govern
in un mondo
the
in cui
economy.
l'economia governa la politica.
And
Mais
now,
aujourd'hui, c'est
today, that was in the
l'économie
past, but
qui
today
régit la
it's
politique.
the
E
economy that
all'interno dell'economia il
governs
capitale finanziario
politics.
svolge un ruolo egemonico.
Et au sein de l'économie,
And
le capital
you know,
financier,
so the financial
c'est lui qui
capital
joue un rôle hégémonique.
plays
Il
the most
capitalismo
important
mafioso è
role.
diventato una componente strutturale del capitalismo finanziario mondiale.
Le capitalisme mafieux
So
fait
mafia
aujourd'hui
capital
partie
is part and parcel
du
of
capitalisme mondial.
world capitalism.
L'Istituto Politecnico Federale di Zurigo nel 2011 ha fatto uno studio importante.
There's been an important study carried out in 2011 by the Federal Polytechnic School in Zurich.
Très importante nel
2011.
2011.
Ha studiato 43.000 multinazionali nel mondo.
What they did is to look at 43,000 multinational companies across the world.
E ha accertato che l'80% del valore di queste multinazionali è controllato da 737 grandi corporation.
And they concluded that
sont arrivés à la conclusion que
80% of the assets of these multinationals are in fact under the control of 737 world groups, banks, financial holdings, and inside these groups, inside the banks, the mafia-derived capital plays a very important role. In 2012, the United States said that the bank
degli Stati Uniti ha riciclato 387 miliardi di dollari per conto dei cartelli messicani, una somma che è equivalente a un terzo del debito pubblico messicano.
En 2005,
so in 2005
il a été constaté que le groupe
the Wachovia Group, which ranks number 4 amongst the banking groups in the United States, recycled $387 billion, which amounts to 1/3 of the American economy, for the account of Mexican drug traffickers.
Perché si sarebbe creato il panico finanziario.
La législation n'était pas en mesure de poursuivre le responsable de la banque
was not sufficient to actually initiate proceedings against the person responsible because there would have been a panic. So basically they reached a compromise and he got a $160 million fine, the bank. So that represents 2% of the annual profit of the bank. So $160 million equals 2% of the annual income of this bank. Yes, benefit. Profit.
Che è un caso tra i tanti.
So, it's just one case, one example amongst many others.
Ha riciclato 707 miliardi di dollari dei messicani e ha avuto una multa di 23 milioni di dollari.
Another
example, it was certified that HSBC recycled $700 billion US dollars and was convicted to a 23 million fine. And there was also investigations done on the Bank of America. And I could give you umpteen number of other examples. So the mafia are actually undergoing a change. Today's mafia is a mercantile mafia, and it is operating on the world open market, and they are offering to the rest of the world what the world's citizens are when there's a world request, and we're talking about illegal goods. Millions of normal people, whether it be in the United States and Europe and Canada, and in in China, in India, in the emerging countries, we're talking about drugs, prostitution, counterfeit products. Again, normal people, wherever it is,
les pays émergents, partout à travers le
and
monde,
anywhere, you name it, they want to be able to consume goods such as prostitutes,
produits contrefaits, etc.
Counterfeited goods,
Et le libre marché
and
L'Unione
the
Europea
free
nel
market
2014 ha stabilito che per calcolare il prodotto interno lordo dei paesi europei bisogna calcolare anche il fatturato della droga e della prostituzione.
In
2014, the European Union considered that in order to assess the GDP of the different European countries, one needed also to include the profits from drugs, prostitution, and other organized crime.
Tra l'economia legale e quella illegale, se l'Unione Europea stabilisce che l'economia illegale contribuisce al PIL nazionale?
Alors, comment déceler encore
So how
une frontière
can you actually tell what is the borderline between legal trade and illegal trade if the European Union considers that one needs to include the income from drugs and organized crime in order to calculate states' income?
Una società nella quale tutto è merce e ciò che conta è soltanto il denaro.
So in a society where everything becomes a merchandise, where only money counts, and the one who has the power is the one who has most money, is an ideal society for the growth of a mercantile mafia.
Che lo Stato messicano abbia le risorse, la forza per combattere da solo contro la mafia.
So back to Mexico and the Mexican state, I don't believe it has the resources and the power to fight single-handedly the Mexican mafia.
Intervenire per aiutare le forze sane del Messico a vincere questa battaglia.
So I consider it that the United Nations has a duty to intervene and to help Mexico to provide the necessary support to the healthy groups to win the battle. Let's stop declaring intentions.
È finito il tempo delle convenzioni ONU che restano carta straccia.
Le temps est passé où les résolutions de l'ONU
enough with the UN resolutions that are just stocked up on shelves. So,
être ému,
okay, being moved, indignating oneself is no longer enough. No. We're down to bare facts now. One needs to set up an ad hoc court, special court for Mexico, with a three-pronged mandate.
Prima intervenire contro i
First,
crimini contro l'umanità che
to
vengono commessi in Messico, genocidi, stragi, stupri di massa.
First, to punish the crimes committed against humanity. Talking about rapes, kidnapping, assassinations.
Poi intervenire
And
per
then,
le sparizioni forzate che violano la Convenzione ONU del 2006.
Ensuite,
then
intervenir
to
contre les disparitions forcées qui
act
violent
against
une
forced
des conventions des Nations Unies
disappearance,
qui a été votée en 2006.
which goes against the 2006 United Nations Convention,
che punisce il rapimento e la sparizione forzata che viene realizzata da forze di polizia dello Stato.
In 2006,
in 2006 the United Nations adopted a convention that punishes kidnapping, sequestration of people perpetrated by the forces that represent the state. And that is exactly what is happening in Mexico.
Internazionale dovrebbe intervenire anche contro I crimini finanziari internazionali.
So this international court should also punish international economic crimes,
drogano il mercato mondiale,
because it's those very crimes that actually bias all of world economy and displaces the power of legality towards draws it towards illegality.
L'ONU dovrebbe applicare forti sanzioni economiche a tutti gli stati che sono complici del riciclaggio.
And this special international United Nations court should apply very strict economic sanctions against all countries who recycle dirty money. But I feel that each one of us can act. We should collect signatures
a mettere all'ordine del giorno la costituzione di un tribunale penale speciale per il Messico.
Nous devrions lancer
we should
la récolte de signatures pour que
a collection of signatures so that public opinion
puisse convaincre l'Assemblée générale
should convince
de l'ONU
the
à
United Nations General Assembly to
tribunal
establish
pénal
an international criminal court in order to punish such
Merci,
crimes.
Monsieur le procureur.
Thank you, Attorney General.
On va tout de suite rebondir
So,
sur les propositions de Monsieur le procureur Scarpinato.
we're going to react to our Attorney General, Mr. Scarpinato. One question. So let's assume that, this court is established. The first condition would be for the Mexican government to wish for it and to ask for it. Do you agree with that?
Sono stati istituiti dei tribunali penali internazionali misti con l'ONU e la collaborazione degli stati interessati.
So international criminal courts have already been established in collaboration between the United Nations and the states involved. Today, the state of Mexico would then have the possibility to show that it is not an accomplice of the mafia. The United Nations shouldn't act against Mexico, but should help Mexico. But on the part of the Mexican government, wouldn't it be evidence of its own weakness?
No.
No. The problem is the following. The mafia has more power than the state. And there's no doubt about it. The mafia is extremely powerful, much more powerful, as I said, than the state, as was the case for many, many years in Italy. And there are, so again, it's only an international power can actually juggle with this.
From the prosecutor from Palermo, did you expect that? Is this a relevant idea that the Mexican government could, should, or would accept?
The idea of an international action regarding a court, regarding the international court in The Hague, or an international group as CICIG in Guatemala, which is the Commission Against Impunity in Guatemala, is gaining a space. It became more popular because of what's going on. Now there is, we can say, initial step, which is the independent working group of experts working with the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. The Commission named those experts for the 43 disappearing students in Iguala. They started almost a year ago, and they are through the way. They presented a report last September, and they're going to present a second one next April. And I think what is really very important to keep in mind is what the procurador says, the attorney says. It could be a show that the Mexican state is not in alliance with the drug cartels. No, it's attacking the sovereignty. It's exactly the opposite. It is defending. Some international action, it is needed. Mexico is part of the inter-American system and is part of the United Nations. So it is part of the Mexican Constitution. It is totally legal. It is totally accepted, and I agree with the procurador. I think something such that idea is needed.
Anabel, do you think the idea in itself is credible? How would it be accepted by the Mexican people? Would it be accepted by the Mexican people, such an idea of an international tribunal, even sort of mixed tribunal with the Mexican authorities?
Through the 6 years of government of Felipe Calderón, the last president, when many innocent people were dying in the streets, in the hands of the cartel, but also in the hands of the government, because again, I have to explain, you really can't see the difference between who is worst, the sicarios that works for the Sinaloa cartel or the militaries or the Marines or the federal police. So in that moment, I really hear many times that the people was asking for the United Nations to please come to do something about this. Many people was talking about the cascos azules. How can I say the word?
Blue helmets.
To come to Mexico and do something and stop the violence at the moment, because that was the emergency. I think that this feeling still be there. For me, it's really disappointing that the International Commission, the international community have been very indifferent about this problem for many years and didn't want to recognize that everyone was part of this problem. So I think that one international court like this could be also one that the international community accept, yes, we are part of the problem, but what is happening in Mexico because we consume drugs, because we help to the cartels to launder the money, because we let them bring the drugs here. That would be a very good step for the international community to admit, yes, we are part of this mess.
Yeah, can I just make one remark? When Mexico gets hold of a cartel leader, the first thing they do is send him to the United States to be tried.
That's why they want to...
Is that a matter of confidence?
Sorry.
Why is that? Why is that? Why is it that El Chapo will be sent to the United States? Why is it that Mexico cannot judge him?
I think there are many causes about this, but I want to focus on two. Mm-hmm. First, because the capo escaped twice from the maximum security jail.
Somebody helped him?
No. Yeah, of course, since the government.
Did you say that again? Did you say that again?
Inside
Did you say the government? Inside the government.
I know that.
You have the names?
I can prove the first escape that
did any
it is not
journalist
possible.
publish the
It
name?
is not possible. It is not possible.
What?
That
To
the
publish the
Chapo
name?
run away
Oh, yeah.
without some help from inside. It's
Inside,
not
very
possible.
inside, yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think...
people from the government inside.
And the high level, not these people that is in jail accused of the escape.
Was that in the press in Mexico? Was that in the press in Mexico? Did other journalists, investigative journalists like you, were strong enough, curious enough to publish that information?
We are many.
That's why Mexico became one of the biggest or the riskiest countries for journalists. And what she mentioned about the Chapo, just the last one, he made a tunnel, 1 mile long, and they made the construction with some digital system protecting the jail if somebody wants to penetrate it.
Sure.
What they did, they turned off the system.
That was easy to do.
To let him go.
And then they say, no, that happened because the Chapo went to take a shower every day. So to protect their human rights, we didn't take the picture at that precisely time.
Yeah.
So protecting her human rights, he ran away.
Okay, now I have a nasty question to you. Why would you said the international community does not pay attention. Why would the international community trust the authorities in Mexico, considering what you just said, that they're accomplices?
I mean, this is
why
not,
should we,
no,
put any confidence in
this
the
is
government?
not about trust in the government, in the Mexican government. This is about trust in the society, in Mexican society. We know everyone are like this or like the corrupted government. Many people in Mexico is honest. Most of them are poor, are honest, are fighting every day to survive with dignity. I mean, the international community should trust in Mexican people, not in the government, not in El Chapo Guzman, in the society. That's why UN exists. I mean, to make many countries that are just filed like Mexico work again. That's a duty.
Also, another thing I want to highlight is that mostly all the international human rights bodies, we have the same diagnosis. The High Commissioner went in October to Mexico. The Inter-American Commission went in September. The Reporter on Torture, the Committee of Forced Disappearances, the Committee of Extrajudicial Executions, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch. We all know, we all say the same. The forced disappearances is so big. The question of impunity, the question of torture, all the international bodies, even if someone wants to know the last version, I invite you to check the website. The Commission, the Inter-American Commission, just presented a report a week ago. It's quite easy. Comisión Interamericana de Derechos Humanos, or in English, Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. And you can find out the report with exactly what the attorney was saying. So the International Commission, the international community in human rights is already aware, and the signals are there. Not doing something against that will be a serious mistake.
Ok. Roberto Scarpinato, venez à l'aide du Mexique. Parlons de conseils pratiques. Je lisais
Scarpinato, could you come to help of Mexico? There was this sentence from Roberto Saviano. You can summarize with 3 points what this Italian model could do for Mexico. Good laws against mafia, relevant laws, investigations with a general attorney, and confiscation of the things, properties. Are these things which have been done in your country, could they be done in Mexico?
L'esperienza dell'Italia dimostra molto.
So the Italian experience proves a lot.
La lotta contro la mafia non esisteva.
So up until the 70s and the 80s, there was no such thing as a fight against the mafia, simply because the government protected the mafia. And it's only when the political system fell apart that the fight really began. And it only happened after the fall of the Berlin Wall. And then, after the massacres that took place in 92-93, the Italian civil society was under such shock that it cried out how it felt about this political class. And there was a general outcry. The political men couldn't even walk into the churches when there were funerals because people wouldn't actually grant them access. Then new laws were adopted that finally made it possible for the judiciary to lay charges against the president of the Council of Ministers, laid charges against a head of the secret services, as well as heads of police. And the fight was tough. But the first prerequisite to this fight is the Italian constitution. That it's the constitution, the Italian constitution, that guarantees to the judiciary independence and autonomy from politics. And this independent judiciary has a direct access to the police forces. If a law cannot function properly, it's when the judiciary cannot act and the system is corrupt. So you've been very patient, and now you have the floor. So again, keep your questions as concise as possible. I see a lady here in the middle. So tell us who you are and your question. Keep it short. Thérèse Obrecht, journalist.
Very interesting discussion. Thank you very much. But I think one big issue is missing. That is drug consumption. Who is consuming the drugs? To my view, it's most of these people live in the north of the Mexican border in the United States. And that's how the Colombian cartel started, selling the drugs to the Americans, and the Mexicans found out it's such good business, we do it ourselves. So, you know, why? I mean, the Americans, what do? They eradicate coca plant harvests in Latin America, but they do not do much to eradicate drug consumption in their own country, right? So what is your reaction to that?
Well,
Anabel.
Well, really, the U.S. government is a very important part in this mess. In the U.S. government. And the people. But no, the U.S. government in a very important part, because in the story of how the cartels grow this much in Mexico, the CIA and other intelligence agencies of the U.S. government were part of that. In the decades of the 80s, the cartels in Mexico were this big. After the U.S. government helped to connect the Mexican cartels with the Colombian cartels, in that moment is when the Mexican cartels, with the power of the money of the cocaine, start to really grow up. In that moment, the president was Ronald Reagan. In the schools, Nancy Reagan was telling to the kids, don't consume drugs, this is very bad. But in the back, the Ronald Reagan government was opening all the airports for the cocaine that came from Mexico and Colombia. So the U.S. government is part of this. But I have to tell something also, another reality. Right now, the number of consumers of drugs in United States have not grown too much. It's established market. Mm-hmm. Do you know which really the good market for the cartels now? Europe. Latin American. That is the piece of cake. They want to eat that cake. They want to eat you. And you are just open the doors because you are consuming all these illegal drugs. So don't think that the biggest problem is just in US, in the north of Mexico. As the judge explained very well, this is for these people, for the cartels, this is money. Everything is about money, like any other company, but of course, illegally.
Merci. Une question, là, j'en ai un petit peu aveuglé ici sur la scène. Madame, je vous en prie.
Oui, bonsoir.
Yeah,
I just wanted to make a question concerning the role of weapons, because I think it's also missing. You just talk about the consumption of the drugs, but I think there's also a big problem with the weapons, because I think it's the same problem as in Syria. I mean, if there are no weapons for the battle, there's no battle, I think.
Yeah, that's not even a question. That's a good command, really. Would you comment on that, really? It seems obvious, but it's good to say that again.
It is a reality, and it's quite unbelievable that, for example, in places like Texas or Arizona, the kind of tramit that you need to buy an automatic weapon is the same kind of tramit that you need to buy a kilo of apples. Nothing. No? You just go and buy it. Give me another green one, please. No, this is too heavy. That one. There is no any control.
President Trump will change that. Don't worry. Monsieur, là-bas. Oui, vous avez... Voilà, oui.
Gentleman over there.
C'est pas une prédiction que je fais.
Okay,
c'est un trait d'humour.
I mean, I was just being humorous.
Last year there was a study done in the UK that suggested that if alcohol was invented today, it would end up being delegalized before many other drugs because of its harmful effects and addictive effects. Now, there is a body called Global Commission on Drug Policy, in which people like Kofi Annan and other prominent people are involved. And some of the studies they have done, or the 2014 report, they suggest that more innovative ways should be found to think about legality of drugs. So at the risk of maybe even upsetting some of the panelists, I want to ask a straightforward question. Leaving all health hazards and socioeconomic impacts on the consumption side, what would be the impact in Mexico of legalizing the drugs that today are causing everything that we have been discussing?
Emilio, that's a question for you, I guess. Or
Nothing.
It would change nothing?
Nothing. Almost nothing. Sorry, almost nothing. Because as I explained you, this is about corruption. Even some illegal activities in Mexico that was illegal in the past and now are illegal, for example, casinos. Now you have very legal casinos in Mexico, but inside exists a lot of illegal operations, because in one country like Mexico, and I think in many of the countries in Latin America that are producing the drugs for the world, are very corrupted. You really cannot control that. For me, of course, I'm against, by my own opinion, against the consume of drugs. I am against, I don't believe that legalization could be good for the people. But also, if I just see the reality and think, really the legalization will stop these cartels? No, because they also traffic women, they also traffic wood, they also are in the legal market, they also traffic make child pornography, and many other things. So you can make, are we thinking that we have to legalize all the crimes?
Yeah, that's...
For me,
that's another debate. Legalize all the crimes. That's something else. Encore une question, peut-être.
Okay, one more question.
Ça y est, je crois que tout le monde est un petit peu fatigué là maintenant.
I think everybody's
oui, là-bas,
tired. Yes,
yes.
The lady who has her hand up. Okay.
Franca Weerda, journaliste.
So I'm Frank Roberto, I'm a journalist. So I have a question for Attorney General Mr. Scarpinato. So I know that the Swiss Attorney General division works a lot, with the Italians, and they've been collaborating. So I'd like to ask you. So according to you, Switzerland has the means to fight these groups, and considering that it's been for 40 years, there was the Frauenfeld group and the other criminal cells, and in Switzerland, we have. It seems we have enough experts. So, is there any collaboration between you and Switzerland? So, could you recap the question? The Italian judiciary cooperates a lot with the Swiss judiciary to fight the 'ndrangheta, and so there was very recently there was an impressive arrest, and they realized that one of the 'ndrangheta network was operating for the last 40 years in Frauenfeld, and we discovered other criminal units. So do you feel that the Swiss Confederation has the means to fight this phenomenon? And it would seem that we actually are lacking experts. So here's the problem.
La magistratura svizzera dà una buona assistenza giudiziaria alla magistratura italiana.
The Swiss judiciary does definitely cooperate with the Italian judiciary. But the investigation against the mafia in Switzerland is always the responsibility of the Italian judiciary. I mean, we have respect for the Swiss sovereignty, and we cannot investigate on all the international mafia activities operating in Switzerland. Okay, but apart from that joke,
La Svizzera non ha gli strumenti giuridici per poter combattere efficacemente le mafie mercatiste.
so Switzerland does not have the appropriate legal means to fight efficiently against what I would call, quote unquote, the mercantile mafias. I mean, they don't come to Switzerland to perpetrate acts of violence. And in fact, they're in Switzerland because they consider it, they use it as a logistic base because it's between Germany and Italy. And they also use Switzerland to buy banks.
Perché è una legislazione delle società che consente di nascondere la reale proprietà dei capitali.
And they use Switzerland as a base
sur les sociétés, autorisant à ces sociétés de
help them incorporate companies where there's a sort of veil of secrecy, and one doesn't, so as to avoid knowing who's really behind these companies.
Nous arrivons à
So,
mafieux
we're able to
s'installer en Suisse,
actually
mais ce n'est que la pointe de l'iceberg.
Hunt out some of the mafia people, but I mean, it's just the tip of the iceberg. If the Swiss courts had the same legal resources as Italy has, then it would discover the rest of the iceberg.
Cambiare l'articolo 260 ter del codice svizzero e introdurre il reato di associazione mafiosa.
So
the first thing that would need to be done is to modify the Article 260
procédure
3
pénale
for the criminal code
pouvoir faire des enquêtes sur les
to
associations
be able
mafieuses.
to investigate mafia operations.
C'est un délit qui en Suisse
So it's a crime
allant jusqu'à
that
5 ans d'emprisonnement.
provides up to 5 years prison sentence.
C'est comme vouloir
It's
guérir le cancer avec
as
une
if you
aspirine.
wanted to cure
Bien,
cancer
mesdames,
with
messieurs, nous
aspirin.
arrivons au moment où on ne va pas se dire bonsoir, mais
Okay.
bientôt bonjour.
So
Donc,
it's
merci de
getting
votre
late.
patience. Je remercie
So thank you
surtout
for
nos
your
invités,
patience. I'd like to thank our guests, Mr. Scarpinato, Anabel Hernández, Emilio Álvarez. Don't forget, until Sunday evening, there are many more films and debates. And thank you for your attention. Thank you.